Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see your photo, your picture, real picture popping up on the screen. It's a lovely morning here in Leicester. So welcome. And our speaker this morning is Zoe Limes, and she's actually speaking to us from Northamptonshire. I'm not sure where the photo behind her was taken, but anyway, it looks beautiful. It's lovely, still autumn morning. You may remember that Zoe did a talk for us back in September, and she did a talk, An Overland Adventure, Cuba to Brazil. And if you saw that, I'm sure you'll remember it was absolutely brilliant. And we're really looking forward, Zoe, to your sharing the more traveling experiences, and this time just from one country, Japan. So I think just welcome to you all, and also welcome to those of you who are watching this on our recorded version on the YouTube. Do please like and subscribe. Over to you, Zoe.
Welcome everybody. As Trisha said, I was here before with one of my previous adventures, and for those of you that have not met me before, I'll give you a very brief introduction. I started traveling when I was very young, and it's always been one of my main interests. Now, in 2011, I decided to take some time off work to complete some personal projects, and one of those was to travel basically as much as I could to countries of interest. And one of those countries that I went to was Japan, and today's talk is on that. As sort of a musical introduction. So I met these girls and I decided to put this in as my first picture because I think it embodied everything that I really enjoyed about Japan. There's a lot of colour and the people were incredibly friendly throughout my whole time there. Now, the picture you saw before me when I first introduced myself was Japan. And I will get on to the meaning of that picture a little bit later. So I called this presentation Ikigai. And the reason for that is because I'm very inspired by Japanese spiritual concepts. And one of those is Ikigai. It's a reason for being or to achieve a purposeful life. And I think that that is something over the past 8 years that I have developed and embodied as part of the way that now that I want to live my life. And Iki is life and Gai is purpose, value or worth. And it means to connect, to create, to delight, to provide, to care. And it's an action and it's very personal to each person. And there's a lot of information on the internet regarding Ikigai and formulas. But it's a lot more about you as an individual and not following a particular formula. And that is the reason for why I put this, I named the presentation Ikigai. So, an introduction to my experiences in Japan. Trip 1 was in 2004 and I went to Tokyo. This was just before I decided to relocate to New Zealand. And I went to Tokyo with the intention of staying for quite a few months. And during my time there, I had such an amazing experience in Tokyo. I actually just stayed there before I went on to New Zealand. My second trip was in 2013. And I got out a bit more and I did a bit more. So I went to Tokyo, Hiroshima, Kobe, Koyasan, Kyoto, Matsumoto, Matsue, Nagoya, Nara, Nikko, Nima, Osaka, and Takayama. The trip 3 was last year, and I went to Tokyo, Fukuoka, Kumamoto, and Nagoya. Now, the one thing, there we go. Right, so this is a map of Japan, and this was quite successful last time, so I decided to include it again. So on the second trip, where I've incorporated most of the places that I've visited so far, I went from Tokyo down to Nagoya, Kyoto, Osaka, to Nara, Kobe, Hiroshima, over here, round, back, and then up to Matsumoto and back down. My third trip, I flew into Fukuoka, and I went down, round, to Nagasaki and Kumamoto, and then back up and up to Tokyo. So there was quite a lot of land covered, but still loads more to see. So I thought I'd include some facts this time as I was going country specific. So the population is around about 126 million. Capital city is Tokyo. And although I don't feel when you're there that it feels that there's quite a lot of people, but you feel as though everybody's got their own space. And in Tokyo, there was 38 million people, and it's the most highest populated city in the world in the greater area. The currency is the Japanese yen, and it's about 72p yen, 72 pence to 100 yen. So the constitutional monarchy with a parliament is with the parliamentary government. There was a change in monarchy on the 1st of May 2019, and the current, at the time, the emperor was Emperor Akihito. He decided that he was going to abdicate, which is a really unusual situation because most emperors will fulfill their reign throughout their whole monarchy, throughout their whole life. And his son, Emperor Naruhito, ascended the throne. He was the 126th monarch. He ascended into the Reiwa era, and this was the chrysanthemum throne. So it's the only country in the world to use the era name system, or Gengo, and the Reiwa is the kanji, and it means fortunate or auspicious and peace or harmony. So as you can see, there is a lot of meaning in a lot of Japanese culture, and it's derived from two kanji characters, rei and wa. So it breaks the Reiwa era does break slightly with tradition, because previously it has the era has been defined by Chinese classical works, and this wasn't. This was by inspired by Japanese works, which I think is quite significant in taking forward this particular reign for this particular emperor. Okay, so I'm just making sure that I'm keeping with all the relevant correct namings. So it's been, the monarchy currently in place has been the same family for over 2,600 years. And they are the world's oldest continuous hereditary dynasty. Sometimes they've been linked to Shinto gods. The Japanese monarchy has existed since 660 BC, because I find it a little bit difficult to work out exactly what 2,600 years is. And they don't have any political, executive or military power, but they are a very traditional significance within Japan, and that's why I've decided to include quite a bit of that. It was also quite an important time for me because this was a major event in Japan and I was there for that. So it was quite amazing to be involved in the celebrations at the time. Sorry. So with that, the current there is currently an established heir to the throne, which is Emperor Naruhito's brother, and they currently have a part crisis within heirs to the throne within Japan, and the reason for this is because there are only 18 members in the imperial royal family currently today, and they're threatened by the succession law that prohibits female members from inheriting the throne, which I thought was quite interesting because the UK removed that in recent years, but it was a similar situation. And they did have a reigning empress, the last reigning empress, which was in 1771. A number of the imperial female members have also left the monarchy because they've married commoners, so they wouldn't be considered in that situation. So the current current government within Japan currently has a task on their hand to understand what and where they're going to go next with that for the future, certainly. So there are 4 main islands to Japan: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and I won't carry on with my pronunciation just in case. So there's up to 4,000 smaller islands. So there is quite a lot of scope, and there are a lot of places to visit. The Japanese Alps is located in the center of the Honshu Island, and that is the main body of the area that I actually have visited. 73% is mountainous, and the largest is Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji is sacred and of significant importance to Japan, and you will find there is a lot of art depicting Mount Fuji for that reason. I think what is important and quite interesting is that there are up to 1,000 earthquakes each year in Japan. So because of being near 3 tectonic plates, that is quite significant in terms of they take it into account when they're building, and just the fact that they have 200 volcanoes and 60 of those are active as well. So it's a very volatile environment within the Japanese continent, the Japanese area as itself. Sorry. And the other, I think that's quite important, is that 68% of the land is forested, with 19% of it being primary forest, and it's very dense. The flag is the white background with the red circle, and I thought I'd list some of the things that Japan is famous for in case you weren't aware. So we've got fine arts, calligraphy and origami, kimonos, Shinkansen trains, the Shinto shrines and the Buddhist temples, sushi, sake, tea ceremonies, geisha, sumo, sakura and aki, which I'll come on to, capsule hotels and ryokans, manga and anime, cosplay, samurai kabuki, Japanese gardens. So I'm going to move on to Tokyo. Now, just so you know, I'm not going to try and pronounce quite a lot of the names as such because, or I will try, but please forgive me if any of my Japanese friends are actually have been able to tune in or read or watch the recorded message of this. So I do apologize if they're not correct. When I first came into Tokyo, I was just quite surprised because there is quite a lot of it in English, and I thought that language would be quite a significant barrier, and it wasn't. Although I didn't find on my daily travels that a lot of people spoke English, I found that travel infrastructure was really well set up for people that did speak English. And so I found it quite an easy transition, and opportunities were a lot easier. The difficulty I found was being able to find out a bit of extra information. So the museums, palaces, all the narrative generally was in English, but if I saw something on the street, I would find that a little bit more difficult to find out what was going on, or what I was actually looking at. So that's just a picture of the Tokyo Metro. They have 9 train lines. It's about 195 kilometers of track, 179 stations. Tickets cost around about 200 yen, so about £1, just over £1.40, and that goes up to 430 yen. And depending on the line, most of the lines are the same price, bar the Toei. Rush hours between 7:30 and 9:30, and 5 and 8 o'clock. The Japanese business hours, people work quite long hours, and to be honest, it's always pretty busy. Tokyo is definitely a 24-hour city, which makes it incredibly exciting walking around at any time of the day. So these are the machines. As you can see, it's got the English next to the characters as well. But on something like the ticket, for example, you find that it's all in Japanese. So there were some issues surrounding that as I travelled around. So you've got modern Tokyo. And I think the important thing with Tokyo is that it is a very cosmopolitan city, but it mixes tradition really, really well. You have all of the high-rise buildings, but you will also have small traditional shops that will be peppered within this. A couple of other photos of Tokyo. You find that a lot of the architecture is really well thought out, and very little of it's the same. It's all very, very different. And as you can see, you've got really, really elaborate building concepts that have been introduced. And although you have the high rise in the business districts within Tokyo, you do see variations in every part of the city. And the most interesting thing is literally you can walk down every single street and find something different. You can find a palace in the middle of high-rise buildings. And I really think that they've thought some aspects of this, and it's just an absolute delight to the eyes wherever you walk. You also have all of the usual designer shops, but as you can see, a lot of effort has been made to make the architecture very different. It has something elaborate on it. And this is one city that I found, as I say, this was literally everywhere, no matter what part of the city you were in. But you also have traditional Tokyo, and you might be walking along all of those buildings and suddenly you come to this. They're very, very large, or they can be very, very small. And this is a shrine. As you can see, there is a lot of visitors, and this wasn't necessarily a particularly busy time of the day, but you do find that some of the major attractions you do find that they attract quite a lot of people. So the one thing I liked about Tokyo was there was always something different, and you find that, for example, there are a lot of influences, certainly from other cultures as well, but generally Japan has been quite isolated over the years and really upheld the traditions of the culture. It was very bright, and around one of the corners in this first picture, you will find Godzilla, the Godzilla Hotel, and he's poking out at the top of it, and suddenly his eyes light up and he's roaring. And you find that in another area there was a very large crab on the side of a building and its arms were moving. So there's a lot of interaction with regards to the cultures and just walking around the cities. I really like this street here on the third right hand photo, and the reason for this is there is, if you are really interested in clothes and something different, then Japan is for you. They do have department stores, they have the designer stores as you've seen, but they also have some really uniquely made clothes. You have little shops that around this area here that have a lot of vintage clothes. You have a lot to do with cosplay. So costume play is a really big thing in Japan. And you will find people walking about their daily business in costume play, so as a superhero. And some of these people will wear something more elaborate as their day wear as well, which I thought was, I really like the fact that people felt comfortable walking around being an individual, and everybody was so accepting of that. And that is something, there was no stairs, it was just literally people embraced it. People would give comments about, oh, you look really good, and things like that, which I thought was a really supportive aspect of the culture. People would come up to me, and even if they couldn't speak English, they would all make an effort to help me, to direct me somewhere, or just even chatter to me, and try their best to interact with me, which I thought was really interesting. And then I came across these guys at the bottom. They were like teddy boys, I think the American expression is, and they would just they suddenly got up and they just did rock and roll, and they do it periodically. It's their interest, and they literally do it as an opportunity to meet up with their friends, and rather than going to the pub, they will come to this park and then they will dance, and they sit and they dance. Nobody put any money in, so it wasn't like a busking situation, which I thought was, again, just really interesting way of spending your time. So I thought I'd include Christmas. There is quite a lot of Christmas in Japan, and this was a really interesting display, and all of these parts moved. All of the parts here all moved. They would go round, they would light up, and they use quite a bit of electronics to be able to achieve that. And the whole city was generally decorated. You had art displayed. So as I say, when you walk down the streets in Tokyo, you will literally find something else, just literally a few feet ahead of you. So let's just go on to Japanese food. I personally am not a fan of Japanese food as much as anything else, because if you notice from the bottom, this first picture, is there's quite a lot of meat and eggs in the food, and I don't eat meat, and it wasn't always easy for me to determine what had meat in and what didn't, and I will show you that from the pictures ahead. But I did love their desserts in picture 3. Absolutely amazing. And this was really common. You could walk along the street and nearly every small shop would have somebody, and that you would be able to watch them prepare all of the delicacies that they have in the shops, which was just fascinating to watch. I would literally stand there for a good 20, 30 minutes. And here, this is a little bit like a batter, and they tip it in here, and then sometimes they'll put in a savoury dish, and they'll use their chopsticks and they'll move it around and they'll turn it into the ball here. It's absolutely fascinating to watch them prepare their food. These are typical shops that sell food. So as you can see, it's a little bit, there are department stores and there are supermarkets, but a lot of Japanese people will actually frequent these type of establishments to buy traditional foods and traditional goods. So in these silver boxes in the top right hand picture, you will find loose tea, loose dried meat, those kind of things, and they'll measure those out and they will give them to you. So it's very similar to what it used to be like in the UK sort of many years ago. So this is a massive selection of the type of foods. As you can see, they incorporate quite a lot of meat and fish in the left-hand pictures into their diet. So for me, it was quite difficult finding foods that would probably be okay for me to eat, and because of the language barrier, sometimes that made it difficult establishing. And as you can see from this bottom right-hand corner, it's difficult to determine what are the ingredients for some of these foods. I tried some, and some of the sweet dishes were just amazing, absolutely amazing. And food is a very important part of Japanese culture. So I did this in my last presentation as well, but here it took it to the extreme. I can't actually remember a time where I saw any rubbish in the streets. That they are so particular about keeping their area tidy within your own district, but also all of the palaces, all of the temples, everything was absolutely spotless. Even when you go down to the underground passages, in the train stations, it's absolutely spotless and it's really clean. And the one thing I like about Japan is I felt completely safe no matter what time of the day. When I was coming home at 2 in the morning after having a meal, certainly from my first trip where I met quite a few people, and I found that I just didn't feel unsafe anytime. I'm not to say that there wasn't situations, but I didn't feel unsafe anywhere. So then we move on to Kyoto. Now, Kyoto is a bit of a stark contrast to Tokyo in that it is much more traditional, and it used to hold, I believe, the emperor years ago until so it's all the old traditional palaces. And as you can see from the architecture, there is a lot of similarity, but every time I went to any temple, it just felt different. And the colours were immensely extreme. Now, in the second trip, I went during autumn. And this is actually an important time of the year for Japanese people. But as you can see from the gardens, they are meticulously kept. Everything is planned. You will have people on small mats and wicker baskets, and they will be by hand. They will be scraping the leaves into those baskets, and everything is so well kept. So as you can see, this is a waterway area. It was literally a walkway area, but it's, again, they've made sure that they're keeping everything in good order. They try and utilize all the space in Japan. And here we have 2 young ladies. I really love this photo because this little girl here was not really very interested in partaking of the photographs, but her sister, who's a little bit older and understands the situation, was definitely telling her what to do and when she should do it. So that was really fascinating. Here I've incorporated some more photos of Kyoto, and during the autumn season, they have there are like cooperatives set up to design gardens, and it is purely for the cherry blossom season, sakura, which I mentioned at the beginning, and also aki, which is autumn. I went on my first trip, on my second trip, sorry, during autumn, and everything is very, very busy. It's a very, very popular time of the year, especially for foreign visitors to visit, and all the gardens are well presented and they are meticulously planned for months, if not years in advance. As you can see, slight variation on one of the buildings in Kyoto. And again, another temple, slightly different again. Now this is the picture I used. Now a lot of the temples will have this structure leading up to it. And this was quite a famous famous temple within Kyoto. I think everywhere in Kyoto led to, I think it took about, I think it's over 10,000 photos in Japan during my 3 trips so far. Now, Kyoto buildings. Now, this is the buildings are designed very similar in quite a lot of the cities, so you'll see quite a lot of similarities. This is a restaurant in the first photo, and you would go in, and a lot of them will have the traditional drapes over the front of the building. You will go up, choose what you want, and go in. You don't get any hassle. People don't generally really even come out, and it's quite private inside the venues. You've got your reed blinds here, and again, this is a very traditional looking building within Kyoto. So you will find sometimes that the owner of the shop will sit outside and he greets all of the people, and nothing is rushed. Everything has a polite, traditional way of dealing with things. And I didn't see, it was just always such a pleasant, calm experience that I experienced, apart from rush hour in Tokyo, but that's slightly different. But especially in a lot of the little towns, everybody gives everybody time to get off the bus, and culturally they're very considerate and very supportive. I did, on one experience, I did see a man who'd, I think, had a little bit too much sake, and another man, rather than leaving, he helped him. They weren't together. He went over to him and he supported him, and he actually supported him along the road to get to where he wanted to go. And the gentleman was a slightly older man, and I just thought, to me, that was just a really good way of a caring culture. So we've got more. These are a row of shops, and this is a traditional mall area, and so it's pedestrianised and people have the opportunity to view. As you can see, the shops are not packed out. They look traditional. They don't look modern in their design, which again, it just adds to the appeal of why I do love Japan. This is a modern mall. And what you find is these connect blocks and blocks of Japanese streets, and they will usually have 2 or 3, possibly more, in different cities. And it's a collection of shops that they'll have under either a canopy or a structure, and you can walk, do all your shopping, and you don't get rained on. It's really nice and warm in the winter as well. These are really popular areas for certainly smaller shops, and they can go on for miles, literally miles. And sometimes you will find there will be a crossroads further down. You will sometimes find that there are hotels up here. I've stayed in quite a few guest houses, and so they're not exactly what I would constitute a hostel, but they're the Japanese version of a hostel. It's a Japanese version of a hostel, and it's they are like a small guest house, and they're really nice experiences. So if you do get the opportunity to go to Japan, please think less about the big hotels and more about some of the smaller guest houses and some of the smaller hostels even. Because as I said, I'm not a big fan of hostels, which I mentioned in my first talk. But here I made the exception. Okay, so following the theme on from shops, if you go to the markets, it's generally really very old traditional items that they sell. So as you can see, you've got lots of old leather, and you've got lots of pottery, and this is not generally new items. They are sort of like grandparents' items and things like that. So there is a lot, usually they are pretty old in the markets. So they're really nice to go and visit, to pick up a few trinkets or something quite traditional. As you can see, I've included a shop here. It's back to Ikigai. It's everything has a purpose. We don't need to have lots and lots of things in the shop if they're not necessary, which you know, is again really pleasant going in. You weren't bombarded with lots of items, and I really like that. So this is a tea shop. People take their shoes off because they're going on to what's called a tatami mat. And these were introduced in the Heian period, but by the Edo period, then, or the era, then you will find that all classes were using them. They are quite high maintenance and they're quite expensive to replace, but they're absolutely beautiful. You will find people will sit on the mats and you'll drink tea. And again, it's all very simple. It's all what's there, what needs to be there. And it's such an amazing experience. So I mentioned Aki. Aki is autumn. It's definitely, I would recommend autumn or cherry blossom sakura to go and visit. Information from that is always produced ahead of schedule as to when this actually is going to happen. And it can sometimes be in different places as well. So try and plan any journeys that you might take around this. And as you can see, the colours are just amazing. A lot of this is planned, especially in Tokyo, in the Japanese gardens there. But when you go to, say, a country, just one of the normal city parks, which has a certain degree of planning, you will find all of these colours are absolutely everywhere. This was literally just by a river somewhere. So, as I mentioned before, the people are on a lot of occasions what makes the place. So this young lady, as you can see, she is, as I said, a lot of clothing is very individual, and you can have a very unique and individual style in Japan and be very cool. And as she has adopted that, I just thought the outfit was amazing, so I took a picture of it. This gentleman, he was really sweet. We couldn't communicate, but I stood here for quite some time and he was showing me what he did, and he took the time out to do that. And as you can see, because you can see outside, it's actually a shop, which he doesn't need to do, and he'll probably have lots of people coming by, but he took the time, which was just amazing for me. So traditional clothing, what you will find is that the kimono is the traditional clothing of choice. It's a lot more simpler for men, and if you notice in this right hand corner, this is the traditional wedding outfit here. Kimonos can range in price, and they can be quite affordable for people, but they can also be really, really expensive, and a lot of that's depending on the quality of the material and the work that's gone into it. I picked up a kimono for £7 from a Tokyo market, and he was selling quite a range in different states of repair, but they were all £7, and some of them were just in fantastic quality for that. And as you can see here in the top left hand corner, women will generally walk around the streets in this. A lot of the geisha that walk around Kyoto, traditional geisha, which are hostesses. I haven't gone into geisha in this presentation because there's quite a lot of history around that, but it's certainly something that you can look online, or maybe another talk at a later date. But the traditional sandals are also worn here, and they are usually, you will have white socks, the sandals, and then your eye is drawn to the kimono. Also very, very elaborate hair dressings. There is a lot of time put into the construction of and design of their traditional clothing. Children, well, they were just amazing. everywhere you went, their personalities would be expressed. This group were literally just out on a day, and the children had decided to dress up. And as you can see, it will have the traditional clothing. And what happens is that Japanese parents between October and November will take their children to shrines, and it's a traditional ceremony of presenting their children to the Shinto guardian god of good health. And that is a really important part of the year, and you'll see lots of children dressed like this during that period of time. So another reason for why it's nice to go at autumn. So Nagoya, I've put this in because they had some really amazing designs on their a lot of their architecture, as you can see in these two buildings here. I've got hundreds of photos of architecture because of how stunning it was. Nagoya, again, you can see Aki is this is a just a park area, so this would just have been normal council type planning, district planning. And art on the side of the building. This lady allowed me to take photos, and this was her constructing her one of her paintings. And as you can see, it's all in the preliminary stages. A really strong development of craft work, and lots of training and lots of practice goes into developing this particular skill and talent in the Japanese culture. And these are some of the items from one of those museums. This is a very old kimono, and just demonstrates, as I say, the work that goes into it. This is the picture on the left is a very traditional picture. There is always, there can be a lot of mountains, a lot of representation of palaces, temples, etc., and also gilding on a lot of the things like bento boxes. You have a traditional dress for warriors here on both the left and the right, and then you have like a fire guard in the middle, and as you can see, it's just so intricate and so delicate, and it really, a lot of the art depicts old traditional stories. Here we have calligraphy, an incredibly old and traditional form of writing, and this is literally just a painting, and this is a screen. Many years goes into perfecting the art, and you are well revered if this is one of your talents and one of your skills. So another thing that is really important in Japanese culture is kabuki. It's a form of entertainment, and you would arrive and you would sit in front of a large construction like this. This is one of my own, one of the photos that is not my own. I've took a picture of a picture just to demonstrate what it looks like. And with kabuki, what you will find is that it is a staged play of a traditional story, and it's very elaborate, as there's a lot of comedy involved on occasions. And you will find that this will be performed sometimes in smaller venues, could be in government buildings. You will usually have a kabuki theatre in all major cities, and also you will find them sometimes in the palaces as well, and parks and gardens. And a lot of people try and attend the shows. So we have traditional dance and music, where the music that you heard at the beginning, this young lady here on the right, she would dance to that, and it would be a very fluid, very slow movement. And she would also have, generally her headdress would be as detailed as this picture here on the left. Next, we have a tea ceremony. Again, it's all very structured, and it was really important. It was certainly on one of my lists of things to do, because there is a lot of prestige, and there is a lot of training in becoming one of the people that would actually deliver a tea ceremony. Now here we have a what's called a ryokan, which is a traditional Japanese guest house. You can see the tatami mats on the floor. Now they do not leave. I did not arrive to this. This is after I left, and I took a picture once the bedding had all been taken out. This would all be perfect when you arrived. Clean, very simple, and definitely something that I really enjoyed staying in here. This is a capsule hotel, and this was one of the best that I stayed in. This was in Kyosan, and you have this small room, plenty of room. I have to say, I was in the middle here, and I have to say, I did one morning say, I'm just too old for this, because I did struggle sometimes getting down the ladders. So if perhaps you are prefer something a little bit simpler, stay in the bottom one. Really nice and easy to get in and out, and they're very traditional. They are very popular in Tokyo, when a lot of the workers would stay late and then will go to a hotel, stay in there and go straight back to work rather than going home. And this one was a beautiful one. The man had put a lot of effort into the design of this, and it literally was this building that you see in the middle, with at the end there was a seating area and a small bar, and he would give you breakfast each morning. This is I think the photo on the right is my favorite photo of pretty much every photo that I own of my travels. This is Matsumoto Castle. The castles are very similar and they're in usually all major cities. You sometimes will find them out in rural areas, but mainly they're in cities. Temples and shrines. Now, the two main religions in Japan are Shinto and Buddhism. Shinto has been traced back to the origin of Japan, and Buddhism was introduced at a later date. So there are about 400 shrines dedicated to various deities. They're always very well looked after, and they will also have quite a lot of statues and religious effects within them. This is just the entrance gate, and then you go further in and you find that there is a large space usually, and they can get very large areas where the shrines and shrines have been built. This is the one. So you sometimes find the older shrines, and so this photo on the right, in the middle of a woodland somewhere, and it's very mystical and magical going into them. You will find this type of statue is either to the entrance of a particular building within the shrine, and you will also find this area where people will go drink either before or after they have gone into the temple. As you can see, lots and lots of work. And then this fellow, I found this animal roaming around one of the temples that I found further out in the area. As you can see now, they do have something called an omamori charm, and you can buy these in all the temples, and I have actually purchased a couple. While they are blessed by the religious monks within the temples. Sorry, just stuck for words there. And they're given to people sometimes as presents, or you may buy one for yourself. And they are kept as I don't want to say good luck charm because it's not, it's much more significant than that, but they are a representation of I bought one which was a blessing for good health and happiness for children, so I gave it to 2 children, and then you keep it, and that is meant to bring good luck, etc. for you. So this is just a map of, as you can see, this is a leaflet that I picked up. You will have the main temple at the top here, but as you can see, the grounds are really vast. And this is just one of the one of the shrines that I visited. The larger shrines will all have some sort of setup or setup in this way. And that is at the back of a ticket for one of them. And as you can see, and this is a good representation of them. So it's sometimes difficult to take photos and get the whole area in, hence the reason you've seen quite a lot of individual pictures of buildings within the shrines. So this is Hiroshima. So I haven't touched at all on politics. And I won't, other than I will mention Hiroshima. This is me in front of the various memorials within the area. And if you don't know what Hiroshima, what the significance of Hiroshima is that 2 nuclear bombs were detonated in Japan during the Second World War. One was in Hiroshima and one was in Nagasaki. I've been to both. It is quite similar in terms of you have a museum dedicated to what happened, and you will also have areas where they have retained some of the buildings so you can go and visit and learn and understand what happened. This was the epicenter of the bomb in this area, and this building was mainly destroyed. It's in the center of Hiroshima. This shows you some of the devastation that was caused, and this was an older picture, and this is a picture of a picture. Most of the other pictures I've given you, bar this one and the kabuki, are all original. And this shows you melted items. So when the bomb was set off, there was extreme temperatures, and everything in the vicinity melted or melted basically, or came together, or you had the ash, etc. I also went to the Mazda Museum. They have quite a few of the car manufacturers that allow you to go in and visit, and I thought this was absolutely fascinating. It shows you older cars, it showed you engines from old models, newer technology. You're not allowed to take a picture of production line. I can honestly say I would literally eat my dinner off of the tools that they used. It was the cleanest and most spotless workplace I think I've ever seen, considering it's the car manufacturing company. And I was just so surprised. They were really welcoming, really lovely. They gave you a tour. I think it was about an hour. And that was really, really interesting. So I took a picture of a few old cars. Then we had Nikko. I've included Nikko because it is one of the smaller areas, and I've included some pictures of some of the shrines there as well. These are slightly smaller on scale, but they still have a plan that is really large, and they will also have, as I say, several buildings within the area, all within the shrine complex itself. I've also included the samurai house. This is a mock-up. I believe it was original, but it has parts of it have been renovated from its original occupants. There, so you see the tatami mat. You will see the sliding doors, and again, this is quite a I'd say a large complex. A lot of the houses, certainly from older periods, weren't just a single house as we would know today. They would sometimes be either one house or a series of houses from the same family within one complex. And samurais were very revered, and they were very much in the higher social class within Japan. And as you can see, although it's still very basic, this would have been these people would have been more wealthy and affluent than other people in the community. Okay, so I've got some more pictures, and the reason being is I like them, to be honest. And we have a shrine. And I'm going to be honest, this one on the left, I'm not actually sure where I took, I know where I took it, but not actually what it was. I'm going to say a temple or a shrine. I also wanted to show you these because they actually demonstrate the beauty of other areas of Japan. I've concentrated quite a lot on the cities, buildings, architecture. There is a significant amount of nature, which I did mention in the beginning. It's very mountainous. There are a lot of forests. I do have a lot of those, but with so many photos, it became a little bit difficult trying to actually integrate everything. I also found that on most of the trips so far, I haven't explored a lot more of the natural environment, but you'll see that that comes into what next at a later date. Japan is also well received as a ski destination, which I would quite like to do in the future. As I was there during sort of November, December time, some of the ski resorts were starting to develop, but as you can see, you know, this would be spectacular scenery. And also I did get to go to one waterfall during my time, which was why that one's included. And I included this because I wanted to show you sort of a more modern type of house that isn't perhaps more like a city type dwelling. And these were more in the suburbs, but as you can see, they're really, really well kept. Some of these will also be sort of shops within the local area. So coming to sort of the end here, as I mentioned, was there for Golden Week. It is incredibly busy and a lot of people get time off work. It was very difficult for me to travel, so I actually didn't travel too much during this. It's a week, but they celebrate sort of over a 2-week period, and it happens in April. They get 4 national days holiday within a 7-day period, and then you have the Showa Day, which represents the birthday of the emperor of Emperor Showa. He died in 1980. And then you also, and so his birthday is generally celebrated around about the 29th of April. I believe next year, I think it's slightly different next year. And then you have Constitution Day, which is post-war, with the post-war constitution was put into effect in 1947. You have Greenery Day, which celebrates the environment, nature, and then you will have Children's Day, which is one of the last days. They wind it up within that 2-day period. And that is traditionally celebrated for male children. There is another celebration for girls, and that is in March, I believe. So, and these are some of the pictures from that celebration. Sorry. They will carry objects around. Now, as I mentioned before, I don't necessarily know the significance of some of this because it was quite difficult to actually discuss it with people within the area to find out what it was. But this is a time of the year when you can literally walk around and down side streets. This was in Tokyo, but it happens it happens everywhere. And down side streets, and it's a really, really big celebration. It isn't too often that Japanese people get the opportunity to necessarily have some time off work, and there was you know, a lot of people who were still working, but this is definitely a celebration a lot of people will get involved with. This was at the museum in Tokyo, and these people all performed something slightly different. And we had the traditional storytelling of mythical animals. And we also had traditional drums, and the children would come out and would dance. And again, these type of events were held in different areas within the city. I'm sure there was information about a program, but I didn't have access to that. So literally I just spent hours and hours every day just walking around to see what I could find, which was a really nice and organic way of being able to experience a lot of it. And people were so welcoming. One man put his camera in front of me and he was so apologetic, and he moved back, and it was just a really, really pleasant experience at that time. So what next? Well, I'm going to go back because I do absolutely love Japan. So I plan a trip in 2022 or 23. Now, the things that I haven't done before that I've sort of got on the plan, the list of things to do, is I would like to go for cherry blossom. Now, when I went in Golden Week, it was cherry blossom. I just slightly missed it though. So I saw the tail end of the season. And as you can see, with my photos from Aki, it was a nice time to be there, but seeing it all in full bloom is just spectacular. So I'll go back for that. I'd like to go back to Tokyo. I'm happy to stay in Tokyo at any time for any length of time. I'd like to go back to Kyoto and see how that's changed since I last was there in 2013, and some of the other areas. So Sapporo is right at the very, very top of Japan. So I'd like to go and experience that area. I'd like to see a bit more of the islands, Kyushu, and the Okinawa area. I haven't explored too much. Now, the things that I would like to do is I've seen Mount Fuji, but I would like to go closer to that to get some photos. I'd like to experience the bullet train. The Shinkansen is the fast train that's very famous in Japan. And what you will find is you can get a Japanese rail pass, and it has been that you have to apply for it before you go to Japan if there is anyone who's planning on visiting. I'd love to go to a sumo event. When I was over there before, I went to the sumo wrestling arena and I learned all about the current champion, but they weren't planning any events at the time. And some of the events can be really, really early in the morning. So I didn't get the opportunity. I'd like to go to the bamboo forest, do some hiking and do some skiing. The general ethos, the general way people think in Japan is very much think of yourself, think of your neighbor, which is part of certainly the Buddhist philosophy. And that is what I liked. I really like the traditional, helping seniors, helping more vulnerable people. And because, I would say there's a million things I could say why I love Japan, but that is definitely one of the core values that I really respect. And I saw it time and time again. So it was, as I said, with this tea ceremony, every action has a purpose. Every part of it is the way she folds the napkin, the way it's put down. And I think experiencing and being able to see that, I think was really, really important for me. And why I can probably say that it does feature as a country that I love and would return to constantly. So I just have one video, so if it's only about a minute, so if I put that on,
that's good.
And what I like about this video is, as I said to you, wherever you go, whatever you do in Japan, there is always something going on somewhere. Can you see that?
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, perfect.
The tea ceremony, and this is the dance. Hopefully you can see it.
Yeah, that was absolutely beautiful, Zoe. Lovely.
But some of the actions are quite military. Is it like Maori dancing, and it was done either in front of enemies or to impress strangers, or for what reason?
That dance was particularly more as similar to like Tai Chi, martial arts based.
Yeah.
A lot of the other dances, I do have another one where the young lady, a lot of the movement is very like that, and it's very contained within a very small space as well. And that's traditional dancing, and she was wearing her traditional kimono, and I think you will find that a lot of, and I'm not too sure on this, because as I say, with regards to translation and what I learned was, I think a lot of that was performances for the emperor, and you know, some sort of historic element there.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you want, Kate, did you want to ask something about?
I asked Martin on the comments in the chat written about, I was interested about the fine art. You often see the tiered pictures of the trees and the mountains and a bit of sky and clouds and things, and they're often, I'm just curious if you know anything about why they're often vertical rather than the landscape format. Is there a symbolism to why they're done like that? You know?
I don't know. There is also a lot of art in terms of in terms of landscape as well. I don't know if it has anything to do with where it would be hung in that respect, because a lot of the art that is horizontal it is usually very long, and I think a lot of art depicts a story in Japanese culture, but I do not know enough about it, but it will be certainly something I can check it out.
Right. I enjoyed the title of your talk, the Ikigai. You know, I wondered whether that sort of reason and purpose and that would be integral in the kind of artwork that you'd see quite a lot.
I think it is. I think it's like with everything. I'm not sure. I don't really know how many people adopt all of the more spiritual aspects of the Japanese culture. It does seem to be, from my experience, something that is passed down through the generations. But I think with every as each generation passes, although because Japan was isolated for so long, I think that it has retained a lot of their culture, and there hasn't been as many outside influences. But now that has changed. I don't know whether some of those, I'd like to think some of those traditions will continue. I don't know how involved that has been affected in, say, the past 20 years.
Thank you.
Can I ask two questions? I mean, it was an absolutely great presentation, thank you, and fantastic photos. But being a bit contrary as I am, I'm wondering about two missing things. Didn't see any fat people at all, or any poor people, but they must be there. Every society has them. Are they sort of hidden away?
My first and my second trip, apart from the one man that had had a few too many sakes, and to be honest, even then he wasn't what I call drunk. He was just a bit swaying about. I saw no homeless people in the whole time I was there, and I didn't see that many people to be very conscious of people being overweight. I believe any culture in modern society does have issues surrounding that, especially, I mean, you have a lot of the fast food restaurants, but a lot of people still eat quite traditional Japanese food in Japan. And whether that has contributed, I have my suspicions that that has helped. But in my third trip last year, I saw more people on the streets than I did before. I don't agree with voyeurism, so I have no photos of anything like that as such. But I did see more homelessness when I was there last year. I don't know how much of a problem that is. It's not, a lot of these kind of topics are not heavily discussed in, certainly with me, whether that's because I was a visitor, I don't know. But I think that there is a lot around the positivity element of communication in Japan. And so whether it would, I don't know if it's something that is discussed generally or not. So I wouldn't be able to say, but I did see more of it last year.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Trish. Hi. On the topic of obesity, I think it is less of a problem in Asia. I've travelled and stayed in Singapore, China and South Korea. And I have to say, whenever we've come back from those places, the thing that sort of hit us in the face getting back to an airport is the amount of fatter people when we get back to this country. And I think part of it is certainly in China is to do with diet, and I do think in years to come obesity will become more of a problem, because they have got, they've got sort of more westernized restaurants now. They've got McDonald's and things like that, and they love that food. The youngsters love it. But I did find that over there are definitely fewer people who are overweight.
Well, we are the fattest country in Europe, so
yeah,
to notice a difference.
There is
I guess the young people don't. They think they love it because they got this pressure on them, haven't they? It's the in thing to do, to go to McDonald's, and I guess that's the tragedy of it. But
so good socializing place.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to a pub, and in Japan, a lot of people have a lot of social groups that a lot of the young people can participate in. As I said to you, with the dance that was in the park, a lot of people are part of dance groups, are part of other social groups, and I think I get that impression that it is certainly from a young age that people are encouraged to do that. I think with somewhere like Tokyo, where the working environment certainly dictates quite a substantial amount of time, and you can experience long working hours. So I do think, though, like was said, that the more that, say, fast food is adopted, the more you may well see more, it might be more observant. Having said that, in a lot of family homes, people cook and they generally will eat traditional food. So that although you will see a lot of people in, say, pizza restaurants, because I did go to quite a few pizza restaurants because of it was one type of meal that I knew what generally was on in it. I think a lot of people eat traditionally in Japan, and hopefully that will negate the fast food influx as such. So
Thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah. Just to, you know, I love the photo of those guys, the teddy boys, you know, who do their rock and roll. It's a shame you haven't had a video clip of that.
I have.
But
I've got a video.
Oh, you have? All right. Oh, perhaps we could see that.
Do you want me to see if I can find it while you're chatting?
Yeah, because you said you referred to the expression teddy boys as an Americanism, and that kind of I thought that must have been an English one, but
it might be English. I don't know where it derived from, but yeah. Would you like me to try and find it?
Well, yeah, that would be great. Yeah,
they're very 50s, aren't they? Teddy boys.
Exactly.
They were before my time, and I thought nobody was.
Yeah.
Actually, the other thing John's just written on a piece of paper here about earthquakes.
They're prepared for them on buildings.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, I think they are. A lot of their buildings are wooden. Obviously, not the big high rises in Tokyo and so on. I mean, I saw more preparation in New Zealand because I went to see the Parliament there, which is on the springs, to compensate, because New Zealand, as I said, was the other country that I know suffers from them quite badly, that I've visited and been aware of. I do believe that they are prepared in Japan, because they do like to be prepared, but I didn't see any particular evidence of it, and I didn't see anything like in Wellington. They have a museum, and you can go down and you can see the infrastructure in the bottom of the building, and you can actually view the springs. But in Japan, I never saw any evidence of that in the museums. I would say they are, but I didn't see anything to suggest it.
Did you actually experience it yourself?
Sorry? Oh yes, I've experienced 3 earthquakes. One reasonably it shook the building, and that was it. I've experienced 2 in New Zealand and 1 in Japan. The Japanese one, the building was shaking, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was me or whether it was an earthquake or not. But I was then later told it was. So it was significant enough for me to feel it, but not necessarily for things to fall off the table. This is traditional dance performed.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
That's one. And
great.
A lot
is she telling a story? Is she telling the story of the song?
Yeah. They, I think with a lot of the dance, a lot of the art, a lot of the even here. Let me see if I can get the kabuki gentleman up.
何としたものであろうぞ。おいやの、まず食うで私。心得た心得た。して何とする。身どももかように戒められてはあれど、これを見やれ。手首が動くわ。まことに手首が動くわ。杯をもたいておくれや。良いところに気がついた。何ともてない。飲まし。
So that is part of the theatrical performances, and then you have something like this, which is much more traditional kabuki. Shows you some of the theatrical performances there as well. So I did not usually with a lot of the performances you'll be given a slip of paper and it will give you a breakdown of the story and also the acts, because sometimes they can have different you know, it might be 3 or 4 acts, and they give you a breakdown. But in all honesty, I participated in as many as I got the opportunity to. I didn't understand a word if there was spoken language, because I didn't speak, you know, I only spoke very sort of like introduction Japanese, and I was fascinated by the whole thing from start to finish, and it didn't matter how long it was, whether that's more specifically an interest on my part. But if you do get the opportunity to go, I definitely recommend you try and embrace some of those opportunities just for the experience as much as anything else. They are fascinating, really fascinating.
Thank you. Thanks, Zoe. Thanks for transporting us to Japan this morning. Lovely. And thanks for joining. Thanks for rejoining, and see you all next Friday, hopefully.
Nice to see many of you again. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye, Zoe. Bye-bye.